Well, this is inside the funny little Soviet block record player, the Swift Stereo Deluxe. You can see it's quite nicely moulded out of this ever pervasive brown plastic they used to use in the 70s. That, of course, is your power on lamp down there, but you can see from the circuit board that it's a very old-fashioned design. Now, I could have sworn this thing had a selenium rectifier in it, but it's got a little blob there, little bridge rectifier. So it must be a bit newer than I thought, and that further makes me think that it's probably from behind the Iron Curtain. Just look at the old style capacitors like Philips used to use donkeys years ago, and the old germanium transistors can be seen there. They're PN, PN, PN1, so you've got a push-pull output, hence the nice sound. Tiny, tiny, tiny little things. I could just see one of the capacitors appears to be marked ECNOS, or should that be TECNOS? Very, very difficult to see. But it's quite nicely put together. Just like Philips did, they've gone and put the transistors on this metal panel, which acts as a support for the whole thing as well. And of course there's a heat sink for the transistors. Now, here is an area that required a little bit of TLC. This is the assembly that turns the power off and on. You know, when you get to the end of the record, it shuts the motor off and turns off the power. And it was hopelessly early at first in operation. And adjustment is achieved by simply bending this one way or the other. I know, yeah, talk about crude. And after a lot of trial and error, because that's all you can do, I've finally got it about right. And there's your little transformer supplying the amplifier side. And you can see that this motor probably, well, it isn't a BSR motor, because a BSR motor usually had a little winding in there to run the amplifier. And sometimes some of their later offerings, being transistorized and all, and having quite a high output on paper at least, the little winding just couldn't supply enough oomph. The idler wheel spring is here, and there's a most peculiar arrangement. It fits on this post. There's one end of it, and the other end of it rests in this slot underneath this cap and the circlip. So, yeah, best left alone, because it's very, very powerful. And I have tweaked it a bit. I've put a bit of a kink in there, which is what they should have done, so it sits on that arm a bit better. Because this arm pulls on the idler wheel, which is out of sight underneath the motor as we're looking at it here. But yeah, very, very, very crude. And of course, there are your two-pin DIN speaker plugs right there in the sockets. You could see here where a 5-pin DIN plug might have been fitted on a different model, but for whatever reason they haven't done it on this one. So there we are, a quick look inside the Swift Stereo Deluxe. There doesn't seem to be much deluxe about it to me. Perhaps it's a measurement of how austere things were behind the Iron Curtain. Bye for now.